call the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. Let's call the October 8th meeting of the Tippecanoe County Council to order and start with the auditor's report.
And hopefully you got your revised packet, because the first one had the financial report from last year. But anyway, on this one, the October 1st, 2019 financial report, the beginning balance in the general fund for 2019 was $10,224,887.37, with projected miscellaneous revenue and property tax. The total available is $58,639,082.37. When you deduct the encumbrances, the budget, the minimum balance, and add back in what we anticipate is the unused budget, our beginning net balance starting the year was $1,876,533.37. So far this year, we have granted additional appropriations of $325,220 and $84.57 in reductions. We have no additional appropriation requests for this meeting. And with the miscellaneous expenditures deducted, our beginning net balance as of today is $1,559,496.69. The next page of the report, we get into the general fund revenues. Just a couple things of note that have happened in the last month, and both of them I think I've mentioned before. Excess levy put $547,000 into the general fund, and this is money that's set in the excess levy fund for a number of years, and the DLGF has said that they erred in a couple counties in ordering us to move that to the general fund. And I think this is mainly old welfare money that we put in there back when we had welfare rates, when those ended. In 0123, the state gaming, there is money that's set aside for all of the counties without casinos, and that is split, and once a year we get money, and $418,333.03 has been our share the last couple years, and that will change once the census is completed. Not sure if that's going to be in 21. I would assume it's based on population, and with the annexation, West Lafayette's probably going to gain some. We will probably lose some, probably, but I don't know the way that's all working out. On the revenues, I didn't see anything else that was really of note. And you see here, when we get to the end, we are at 69% 9 months into the year, but we only, of course, have property tax twice a year, so that is not reflected in there as far as what we've collected since the June settlement. Get into the fund balances. The general fund, we have $6.5 million. That is below the minimum balance, but again, if property taxes were put in there as far as what we've even collected, that shouldn't be a problem. 1124 and 1125, that's the congressional school funds, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but the congressional school principal, that has not changed in many, many decades. And then the interest on that money goes to the school corporations, and that is the money that we want to just send to the state, and they can do the same thing. That was an option that came up a number of years ago, and I think it's time for us to just send the money on to them. I believe it still goes to schools the same way.
Bob, on the general fund, that $6.5 million balance, is that as low as it's going to get, or will next month actually
It will be lower next month. It probably in November it will be lower.
And then December.
And then even the one you get at the 1st of December, which would be the end of November, that will be lower.
Okay.
We have had years, certainly when I was auditor before, where most of the year it was negative. So that really is a good balance for this time of the year.
Okay.
Because we will get, $10, $12 million, $12 million probably at settlement time. 1167, that's that levy excess fund. That's where my $547,000 has been held for a few years, and so now we're going to zero that out, so that fund would be completed. 1205 is the tax sale surplus fund. We have the tax sale in the month of October and, or in September, and we sell the properties with the amount of delinquent tax, and then, of course, it is an auction, so the amount of money that is, when it's sold above the minimum, that is put into the tax sale surplus fund, and then is generally given back either to the purchaser at the tax sale through the redemption, because we hold the money and then we give that back to them when it's redeemed, or it can go, if there is a title transfer, it can go back to the person who lost the property. But so this is like $1.3 million that we are holding, and so we can get interest on that money. So there is some benefit to the county, but after the tax sale is when that goes up, and after that, it just goes down on the balance. This 4710, again, the self-insurance fund, we did collect $300,000 more in the month than what we paid out, so we are at $8.325 million in that fund, so that continues to be a good thing that's really helped us out at budget time. I believe that's all I had. I did have, the next page is my little overview of some of the county funds, and I kind of dealt with the wheel tax and the surtax, and to just kind of show you the 6021 and 6022, that is where the monies come in from the state, and we get the monies for all the entities. That is kind of a holding fund, so you get the end of the year balances. It's going to be the little bit that we received at the end of the year. And then the 4805 and the 4806 is the money that we distributed that we keep for ourselves, that the highway department would use. But that is just a little synopsis. You can read that if you would like. That's all I have. If there's any questions.
Any questions for Bob? All right, thank you. Next up, the treasurer's report. Jennifer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the month of September, we had interest of $196,948.37. This is on $115 million in bank accounts and investment accounts. We did have another rate decrease, and so that was the one I had anticipated for this year and for next year's budget. So if there are any more of those are not reflected anywhere. I know that we'll now have the money from the income tax next year that we'll be holding, which also didn't reflect any interest earnings, so that will help with at least the budget part of it. Don't think that I have anything in particular to point out on the distributions. For the general fund, we are sitting at $1,029,000 in interest out of $2.2 million. And so that is 79.2% of where I expected to be at this point. Are there any questions about interest?
Questions for Jennifer?
I do have a shadow from Harrison High School with me today. This is Eli Kelly, and he's here for just a few hours, kind of learning about a finance role that might be in his future. So,
Good. Welcome. Are there any public comments on today's agenda items at this time? Seeing none, are there any items that need to be removed from today's consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilman Underwood, seconded by Councilwoman Stonebreaker to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Can we hear, I see that there's a grant in here for WIC. I don't know if they're there to explain the grant. It looks like it's maybe a yearly appropriation. Anyone know anything else?
If you want,
She's here.
Alicia's
Okay,
here if you
yeah,
want.
yeah. Yeah, if you could tell us a little bit more about that, since it looks like one of those grants that's going into consent agenda.
Yes, this is the first year it's gone into the consent agenda. Usually I'm up here every year asking for this appropriation. So there's 2 grants. 8880 is just for our big NSA WIC grant, just to be able to continue services in Tippecanoe County. And then the second grant is 8882 for our peer counselor grant.
And we're skipping ahead, but it looks like we're also approving 2 salary statements for the positions related to the grant.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Alicia?
Thank you.
Bob, you might explain what we were talking about what puts grants in the consent agenda versus,
Yeah, we kind of had the discussion a couple months ago, and from what we understood from the state, that if a federal grant with a budget attached to it do not have to have council approval. Now, we didn't want to take that step to not bring it to council at all. So we thought, well, maybe that's a good little alternative to put it on the consent agenda. And this is a grant that comes with the budget attached to it. We have the first one we have coming up with TEMA. That one was a little bit not really stating exactly what they were wanting the money to be spent for exactly, so we'll put that on the regular agenda. But just if it is a grant with the budget, I mean, when we've accepted the grant, we've accepted that appropriation, so. But we want the council certainly to be able to see it, so we put it on the consent.
any other
If that's
questions?
okay, and we can go back to, if you want to do anything other than that, we'll do it, but.
No, I think it's fine, but I always, if it's around $1 million, I always like to slow it down
yeah.
a little bit.
If it's a budget that we can't
Yeah, we can't do anything
change
with
it,
Yeah,
so
it's
that was
mostly
why we
just for-
talked
But
about
for the
putting it on.
education part, if you want us to know if it's over a certain limit, like if you over $1 million, we certainly will put it onto the regular agenda. Whatever your pleasure is, we'll take care of it.
Either way.
Yeah, I think it's good where it's at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Yeah, that motion passes. Additional appropriations, TEMA.
Mr. President, I move to approve the SHSP Hazmat Fund 8438 grant appropriation for $13,500 as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
The motion by Councilwoman Stonebreaker, seconded by Councilwoman Vernon, to approve the SHSP Hazmat Fund 8438 HS16 appropriation grant for $13,500.
So after talking with Brian this morning, I thought I should clarify this. The way I worded it on the appropriation is sort of a deceiving. The state receives monies for SHSP funding, and in 2016, they received an amount, and they awarded their grants in 2016 to all 92 counties, or however many they got appropriated for. When those counties don't spend all of their money, they have to send that back to the state. So when it comes back to the state takes the deobligated funds from that grant and does the same thing again. Says, here you go, counties, file and put in another grant application. So that's why it says it's funds that were deobligated back to the state. So Indiana Homeland Security received funds back. I don't know what they received back, but those emergency management agencies that were available to, it's a quick turnaround type thing. If you've got a project that you want to see funded and you know how to write the grant properly, then you can submit your application. So these are 2016 funds that TEMA thought would be great to have stop bleed kits in our government facilities, and those kits are for mass casualties or disasters where we have massive bleeding, where we can have employees from the government facilities apply tourniquets or Band-Aids or gauzes or whatever to stop the bleed, basically. And we'll have training for the employees as well, and there's no cost for that. So all we put in there, the only thing that we're asking for are the kits, and we got approved for that at $13,500.
Any questions for Sharon? All right, we have a motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Highways, Stu.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion for the Community Crossing Fund 9108, or the appropriation.
The motion by Councilwoman Vernon, seconded by Councilwoman Stonebreaker to approve the Community Crossings Fund 9108 appropriation for infrastructure and roads and streets for $1 million, Stu.
This is our Community Crossings Matching Grant. We applied for 2019, $1 million. It's a 50-50 match. It's being used to reconstruct County Road 450 South from US 52 over to Newcastle. Project is paved out, will be done by November. Then close the account out.
Any questions for Stu?
So when I look at the fund here, I mean, this is more of a question for Bob. It only shows $660,000 in the balance.
Yeah, we initially had paid this out of the project fund, and then
Okay.
it was brought to our attention it should have been paid out of here, so we made a journal entry to take it out of here. If you would not approve this for some reason today, we would probably do a journal entry and move it back to the project fund.
Okay.
But so we have kind of spent some of this appropriation already.
Okay. And tell me again where it's for? It's for,
It's County Road 450 South.
okay,
Okay, US 52 over to Newcastle. That's the industrial area
Okay.
and development.
Okay.
So the road's being straightened and moved up to an industrial section with, paved shoulders and basically ready for expansion.
thank you.
Any other questions for Stu? We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we have several salary statements.
Mr. President, I move to approve the 2019 salary statement for the sheriff for $89,368 for job title changes, as well as admin assistant and a jail maintenance director, as presented.
Second.
Took me a while to get up here.
We have a motion on the floor from Councilwoman Stonebreaker, seconded by Councilman Underwood, to approve the 2019 salary statement for the Sheriff's Department. Mr. Sheriff.
What this is, Shirley got with us beginning of the year. We had to give job descriptions for our administrative assistants. They apparently haven't had them for a number of years. So we got that done. Chief Deputy really got it done fairly quickly, and then that resulted in some changes to people's salaries, and that's what you're seeing here. As far as, you didn't get to the next one, did you?
Oh, no.
Well, then I'll wait on that one. But that's the reason for that. So now everybody has a job description. One person actually moved up a level. So that person will see a pay increase to be paid for what she's doing.
Any questions for the sheriff? There's a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Mr. President, I
Motion
move
passes.
to approve the 2020 salary statement for the sheriff for $358,948 for 6 job title changes and 2 reclassifications.
Second. We have a motion from Councilwoman Stonebreaker, seconded by Councilman Underwood, to approve the 2020 salary statement for the Sheriff's Department as requested.
And that's a reflection of the same thing.
Questions for the sheriff?
On the job title changes, how did that figure in?
One went from, what was that? Or secretary from 2 to 3 is the way that, and it has to do with the things they're responsible for. Some handle money, some don't, but that's what that is. And
So
I
would that be
believe
the
there
case
was,
where they did have a job description? And
you know what, Shirley would be better answer because we haven't had job descriptions for them for.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's been
Thank
a
you.
long time. How many years has that been?
Since 1998. Those job descriptions have not been updated since
Are
1998.
you sure you're not going too fast here, Bob?
Well, I started there in 97, so I finally got to those 22
It's
years
been much
later.
quicker than, it's been several
Obviously, yeah.
different ones. And basically, the 1998 descriptions that were originally done when we first hired Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy, they had very specific, like secretary, writs and warrants, secretary, criminal records,
Criminal
secretary.
record, there's-
They had all the different ones. Over the years, all of those job duties have changed, and everybody was doing something that didn't fit any of their descriptions. So what we did was to give that administrative pool basically one description that encompassed all of the different things that they do, so that then if they want to change who's doing writs and warrants or whatever, they can do that, because the job description is all the same. Now, in the process of doing that, in addition to those ones that are comment 3, there's 2 of the administrative people that actually do accounting and such, and so their jobs factor higher at the comment 4 instead of the comment 3 levels. But we had one person who's been sitting in a comment 2 level doing work that really should have been comment 3. So this has been a long time in coming, but Terry and Melissa worked on that with me, and they got it to me, we got everything looked at, and it truly does factor as a comment 3. So that only one person is changing in that administrative group. The other one is the maintenance one. I think that was on the same.
Yeah, and that was the one before, but the maintenance one was, we had to redo those job descriptions as well, because there were certain things that the person was doing, not the same thing.
Yeah, combination of duties changing over the year, plus the county changing the way they do maintenance in general, with having one person as the hierarchy goes, and then the people under it that do certain facilities, so.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Other questions?
Yeah, sorry about that. That started years ago.
We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
Thanks.
Sheriff. Commissioners,
Mr. President, I move that we approve the salary statement for 2019 for the commissioners for the reclassifications, Assistant Maintenance Director, LTC 5 to PAT 4.
Second.
the motion from Councilman Underwood, seconded by Councilwoman Vernon, to approve the 2019 salary statement for commissioners and maintenance.
Yeah, does anyone know the story on this one?
Basically, it's a swap. We have a maintenance position at Sheriff's, we have a maintenance position here, we pretty much swapped the two.
Basically, what happened with that is similar to what we just talked about with the one position at the sheriff's office. They have changed the structure of maintenance for the county so that the entire county is over one maintenance director, and then there's the next level that covers certain areas. And what we did with the sheriff's department basically was flip that, because what it did was put the hierarchy in it so that one of the people that was doing just the sub-departments was at a higher level than the assistant to the main. And in looking at the duties and everything, it was switched around. So that is why the assistant maintenance director has been changed, because there's a lot more administrative in that as well. So, any other questions?
Anything else? All right, we have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And also, same thing for the 2020 salary statement for commissioner maintenance.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Underwood, seconded by Councilwoman Vernon, to approve the 2020 salary statement for the commissioners in the maintenance department. Any discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have WIC.
Mr. President, I move to approve the 2019 salary statement for $154,224 for the WIC 2019 grant budget as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Stonebreaker, seconded by Councilman Underwood, to approve the 2019 salary statement for WIC. Any discussion?
So I have a question. How come the annual salary isn't 12 times the monthly salary?
I think this is, Alicia might be able to answer this, but I think this is just for the balance of this
It's the
year.
balance of the year.
This is
Okay,
just for
so
the
it's just
rest
the
of this
remainder of the
year.
year?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That may follow on the 2020, your 12 times. I'm
Well-
assuming it, well,
And that's
no,
what
it
looks
doesn't,
like.
it
Because that's
doesn't.
only through the end of September.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
yeah, I
right.
see it's the
Their
same
fiscal
people.
year.
The fiscal year is
Our
different,
calendar
yeah,
year.
it's a federal year. All right, any other questions? We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. One more.
Mr. President, I move to approve the 2020 salary statement for $447,751 for the WIC FY 2020 grant budget as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Stonebreaker, seconded by Councilman Underwood, to approve the 2020 salary statements for WIC. Any other questions for Alicia? We have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any committee reports? John wasn't able to be with us this morning, so his committees will hold till next time. New and unfinished business. We have a resolution, Resolution 2019-27-CL, surrendering the custody of the County Congressional Township School Fund. And my notes say, Bob, explain, because we don't have a congressional township.
This was money that I know I didn't research this time, but I think that we've had this, was it before Lincoln was president, is when we were given this $43,000. And the idea was at that time, the interest on the money was going to the school corporations.
Does this go back to township schools?
We send it to we don't send it to the township schools, but to the school corporations. And part of the idea back at that time, and it's in the law, that we could loan this money out. I believe it's at 10% interest, if I remember correctly. And back, 150 years ago, $43,000 was a lot of money. But anyway, there was an option a few years ago, probably close to 10 now, where we can turn this money over to the state, and basically they will do the same thing, I understand, as what we were doing, sending out the annual claims to the school corporation. So this is the idea of this resolution, to just send this money all to the state of Indiana, and then the state auditor will take care of the same sort of things that we were taking care of with the money.
Is it a roll call?
No.
All right. Well, we'll need a motion for this, I guess.
Mr. President, I move that we approve Resolution 2019-27-CL as presented.
Second.
The motion from Councilman Underwood and seconded by Councilwoman Stonebreaker to approve Resolution 2019-27-CL. Any other discussion?
Bob, just, you may have said it. To your knowledge, how long have we had this money?
I believe it was either the president before, during, or after Lincoln.
Wow. He doesn't know. I thought he was kidding when he said that.
That was before I was in with the county. So.
Just before.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, when did we lose
The
control
state
here?
will figure out how to reappropriate these principal balances that we're sending back to them.
Believe it or not, we have a motion on the floor. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Commissioners, FYI.
Mr. Chair, I did have one item
I'm
of
sorry.
new business
Yes.
that relates to old, but I brought just a couple, now that the public safety lit is a reality with last night's
Yes,
actions
it
by the
did pass last
councils.
night on both city councils.
Not for answering today by all means, and maybe not for consideration, but just to throw out to the council, I think we have a couple of key items that we need to consider and get our arms around. We stand to get between 3.9 and 4 million annually, starting to accumulate on January 1st of next year. So on a $50 million budget, that's an 8% increase right there, plus whatever increases we had from 19 to 20 in our budgeting. So we probably have effectively, if we looked at that as operating money, a 10, 12, maybe 14% increase in available funds. So knowing that that's going to be on us in a hurry, I think a couple of key questions that we need to be proactive about are, number one, what's our policy on the use of these proceeds? That could range from, are we going to use it for operating money? It has to be within the bounds of public safety, so that's assumed. But I don't think we can stop there because there's a lot of questions that follow. Is it one time or is it recurring expenses? Do we have a policy? Is that going to float? Will we only appropriate these monies at budget time, or will we appropriate them, at least in this first year, ahead of budget time? And if so, under what rules would we do that? In talking to people, I think everyone knows these new funds are here. Will we only administer these to public agencies or county government, or will they be made available to private or outside of county government public agencies? So those are just examples, 3 examples of questions I think we need to wrestle with. If we don't wrestle with them ahead of time, they're going to be on us and we can deal with them on a one-off, but I think they're pretty big. The one-time versus recurring is big because let's just say we took $3.9 million out of our general fund and moved it over to some special fund. We moved, let's say, $3.9 million of the sheriff, since that's, I'm not picking on you, Bob, but but since that's the biggest budget, just say we took the whole thing and funded out here, then immediately every other non-public safety department in the county could increase total by 10, 12, 14% in 1 year. And so that could have a very big impact. Second question I think we need to consider is what's our administrative, to support this, then is what's the administrative process and infrastructure to set this up so that we as a council can be as fiscally responsible as possible. If it just gets thrown into a bucket, I think it's going to get lost and we won't have control. So we've probably all been thinking about this, but I felt it important to get these 2 questions, and there may be others that come. But again, knowing January 1st is the day this starts, I think the time's right now that we need to figure these things out.
Yeah, and the other thing is we need a clarification on when we actually have money to spend.
Right.
The initial answer from the state was you can start spending it January 1st. If we're not collecting it till January 1st, that doesn't follow with any other tax collection that we have. We don't get the money immediately. There's always some downtime and lag time.
Yeah.
So whether we'll even have money to spend in next year is...
However, I may have what you will probably think is a counterintuitive thought coming from me, but if these needs are real and imminent and pressing, with our balances, if we need another officer, we should do it right now and know that we can cover it by the time that money gets here. So
certainly, and
yeah.
those are the kinds of discussions that we as a group need to have.
Yep.
And you're right. I mean, all of these things are things that I'm sure we've all thought about.
So how will we do this? How will we, if council thinks these are important questions to answer, how will we answer them?
I think one thing that me and Bob and Lisa were kicking around yesterday is the establishment of another committee to develop a proposal for council to consider, well, some of these things I think we do need to decide, such as where, I think there's been some discussion about who can benefit from, because our county definition of public safety is not the state's definition of public safety. So we include things like the public defender, right? We're not sure if the public defender is not included in the statute, but maybe we need to figure out that sort of stuff. When we say public safety departments, we mean something different than what's written in that statute. But also those can be, I think, discussed by the council as a larger group. But certainly, I think developing an idea for how to administer this fund or what sort of apparatus we'd like to see, I think, is something that would benefit from some people kind of doing a study, maybe on these other counties and what they've done and what won't work for us and what might be something that we would want to adopt as well, right?
Right. Where we've been talking about primarily the judicial system, well, not judicial, but the sheriff's department and related things outside the courts, and the cities are talking police and fire. Some counties are talking about emergency management, emergency ambulance services, lots of other things that we have not discussed really in detail. So I agree that we need sort of a study committee to come up with both the questions and the answers, or a proposal for the full body.
Right. Well, and the other thing is that I really think that we really need to take a big, deep dive into the budget in total, because those of you who have sat with me for years realize that we've taken things out of the general fund and we've shifted them to other funds just because of budgeting. And so I think we need to look at, okay, some of the things that we've shifted, we're gonna have to bring back out of that general fund as we move forward. And we have to have a plan, because this isn't, it's not like we're a great big lottery winner here and we spend all this money and then we look down the road 3 years and it's like, wow, what have we done and where's our money? So we really need to take a hard look at all of our funds and then really have a specific 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year plan, what we're gonna do. What are our needs?
Any comments?
Yeah. And I was going to bring them up also, and I brought it up before the vote, but we also need to have an evaluation plan for, is this doing what we need it to do in 2-3 years, as we do some kind of one-time cost funds versus reoccurring, is this doing as intended, that sort of thing. Because, we could always lower taxes later if we've solved all of our public safety needs or whatever we would consider. But I think it's important to evaluate it or have a plan for what success looks like for that fund.
And although I don't agree with the public policy of using a perpetual income tax that will not stop coming in on defined term expenses like paying for a facility, that once the facility is paid for, you're going to continue to collect the tax. But yet we could choose to set aside for a few years piece of this $3.9 million to fund whatever it is we may need in jail expansion or community corrections, instead of just totally assuming we're going to roll that bond over. So, it's going to get, it's a complicated thing. So.
That's the difference between this fund and the other one that could have been just the county.
Right.
Which is just for bricks and mortar, but it does sunset at the end of the bond.
Right.
And that was just to pay for a bond.
Right.
If you're building a jail or whatever.
I just don't want us to have, I don't think any of us do, but we didn't just open up a $3.9 million a year store and say, how are we going to spend this?
Yeah. No. Well, and the other question that will come up, that we and the cities and the towns also have to consider, is township fire.
Exactly.
Because that money comes off the top, and there is a specific application and time period for that prior to budget time. So we won't have to deal with that until next summer, but there's a July deadline for the application, and then a September 1, I believe, deadline for the tax council to vote, which would mean we would have to vote the cities and the towns as well to approve that. And that's an annual application, so that just because you do it once doesn't mean it ever goes on again. So that's a discussion that will also come up. Mm-hmm. In terms of a review and policy committee, I would agree that members of this body and maybe a commissioner, along with our auditor or someone from his staff, however Bob wants to work that out, and possibly Doug from time to time, would be a good thing. We've done that with our budget planning committee, and it certainly doesn't need to be the same people. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. So if there are people that are interested in that, we would be limited to 3 council members for that. But I think that would be a good idea.
Could we get that set up between now and the next, what is this? This is October, the November meeting?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I've worked on that a little bit. I've got, whatever, just, I've put some numbers together, but one thing to me that you need to look at is with this $4 million or whatever pot of money, I mean, we've got probably $750,000 that we have moved from the general fund to eat it and cum cap just based on need. And not that it's not just the shell game to move things around, but we've got some needs in the general fund that we weren't able to take care of. And to Lana's point, if we would ever want to lower the levy, not saying that we need to do this, but this would be an option maybe that we could increase the Cume Bridge rate, because, you know, you increase Cume Bridge, you're lowering the levy for the general fund, and maybe you could stay at maximum levy, but if we think we need more money for bridges, we got the major bridge fund now, but do we need something more than, you know, there was a time we had $40 million in the Cume Bridge. Now we're, you know, scrambling to make sure that we have a positive number. But there's just a lot of things that we need to look at that, but obviously this money needs to go to public safety, and we got some other issues too. We're not just cruising along. We've had to make some changes to make sure that the general fund was stable.
All right, we've got all of those kinds of needs, plus we have the court coming on in a year that we'll have to deal with, and that, as I understand, is not
Right.
out of public, that
not
can't
in
come
that.
out of public safety money. So lots of things to consider over the next 8 or 9 months. Mr. Byers, do you have any comments? You look like you're like jumping out of your chair there.
It's just a bridge, don't worry about it.
Except when you drive over it.
No, I think it's great what you brought up, Roland, and I think it's the challenge you're all gonna be looking at. I mean, it's very easy on a commissioner side, say, hey, we need 6 million right there, and guess what? We'd like to see all what you've been coming out of Cume and eat it, get put back in the general. We don't want to play the shell game, but I think it's a great idea that you sit down and you start really thinking through all these different avenues and such. And I mean, I'm sure Bob would automatically say, can I have 20? Probably, and that'd be correctional officers or deputies. I mean, it's real easy for everybody to honestly say that. So, good questions coming up. Really, I just want to say thank you for those who put the hoedown yesterday. It was a fun event. Good cause for United Way and for an honor flight. And other than that, that's the only FYI I had. So,
All right.
Do you,
Well, back to our other.
did you have a fairgrounds update at all?
No.
it's moving.
It's moving? Okay.
They're moving lots
Well,
of dirt.
it's not moving, but it's, no, they start pouring, they supposedly start doing footers, and supposedly start digging the pillars, and sometime, possibly next week, 80-some semi-loads of steel show up. So, if you get out there and you walk it, and if you see where the gravel place, or the gravel has been brought in, 8,888 ton of gravel was brought in, and it raised the ground by almost 1.5 feet. And that is actual footprint of the North Wing Coliseum Gallery and East Wing. So you can pretty much kind of see the footprint right now of what the initial part's going to be.
And raising that 1.5 feet was almost the bare minimum.
Well, you still got to add cement now on top of that.
Right, well, but
yeah,
we know how that kind of,
it's not going to be soft anymore. So, but yeah.
wonderful.
And I haven't heard anything from Tracy on the jail report yet, so we haven't heard anything on that part yet either, so to be honest with you.
When are we going to get that? It's just ridiculous.
Right. I mean, because that's something I think we really need to know, because we know there's one bond, the payment's coming up. What are we going to do on the thing? So
It's October.
we're supposed
We've
to
been
have June
looking
or
for
July.
data for
June or July, I thought.
10 months.
Yeah,
At
almost a
least.
year.
Right.
Last
Yeah,
year.
since last year, yeah.
Bob's been looking for it for 10 months.
Who's the
It was before that.
consultant, and can't they make a best guess on what they got? You never get all that you want. Please.
Like I say, that's really a Tracy question for you, to be honest
Where's
with you.
he?
He had a doctor's appointment this morning at 8:30.
Okay.
So, but DLZ is the one that's doing the report supposedly.
Okay.
Maybe Bob.
So can we call DLZ today?
Yeah.
Can somebody call DLZ today and ask them?
I'm gonna see Tracy at 10:30 because we're meeting out at the Y, and I'm just gonna be riding then.
Is it the consensus? I don't want this to be me. Is this the consensus of the council that this has got to get off the schneid?
This is crazy, yeah.
I think
And
this
if
has
they
a
can't
big
do-
effect, yeah.
If DLZ's not the one, they can't get us what we need, maybe we need to look to somebody else.
I'm sure that, yeah, I would, yeah. I don't know if they know everything that we're thinking, so thank you.
Yeah,
Because
especially
I
as
think those
considered
questions
this.
we need to know as you now look into this public safety tax. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand and hand in hand.
Well, it's really, to the public, it's a little presumptuous on our part to tell them that we got all these public safety needs and maybe what is one of the most important and impactful financial projects facing us, we can't even act on for this many months. It's a little embarrassing, frankly, so.
Well, and how much involvement, Bob, our sheriff, I mean, can you also talk to Tracy, or, and if you can't get hold of DLZ, or? Okay.
Talk to Lee Ford at all these conferences with the DLC and ask them who that's even meeting. I don't know what's going on. I can go back and get a number for DLC and try to call them this morning. I'd be more than happy to do it. But nobody's ever reached out to any of us about our needs or what we think we need. It's a process. In this position, I'm new to that process, but I think we need to think about 30 years ahead. You know, you look at heroin, now's a problem. Well, heroin was a problem 30 years ago. Safe to assume it's probably going to be a problem in 30 years. So what can we build that we're just not warehousing people?
So you've not even had a meeting, I'm not laying any of this on you.
No.
Every conference I go to, when I see the DLZ, I go right to them. Where are we with our expansion?
And their answer is, we're waiting on data.
Sometimes, or it's, hey, you want a keychain?
Yeah.
But also, like, they haven't asked,
I don't think that, from what I've heard, this isn't on DLZ, it's us handing them something, and if we can't get that something, then we need to say to them, give us the best you got and tell us what the qualifiers are, and then we'll figure the rest out.
He told me last was he extracted the data, and there's some things he can't extract. I don't know what those things are, but I don't know if that question's ever been
Yeah.
from DLZ saying, here's all I have.
Right, and we heard that about extracting data at our budget hearing.
And before even, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that was how many weeks ago that we sat in this room during budget
Yeah.
hearings, and so, you know, where are we?
We need a point person. We can't throw a bunch of people in it and really muck things up, but it sounds like Tracy's our point person, but
Right, but it sounds like that, you know, we need
But
to
he's-
have
nothing's
communication
happening.
with our sheriff as well.
yeah.
So,
Thank you for indulging my frustration.
Oh,
thank you.
so I guess from our discussion, I envisioned a committee of 3 council members, a commissioner, and Bob and Doug, possibly. So those who are interested, let me know, and we'll get that arranged. At this time, is there any other new business or unfinished business?
Just that today the election started, so.
Oh, wow.
Please go vote. Early voting started today.
Oh, that's all right.
I can't vote. I live in the county.
Sorry, for those of you.
sorry, all you
Those of
guys
you
who
who
don't live in the town or
city,
city.
sorry.
Yeah.
Disenfranchised.
Cities. All right, is there any additional public comment at this time? Seeing none.
Move to adjourn.
Motion, thank you, sir. We are
At
out.
Harrington. Can I talk to you something?
Good to see you guys. I'm going to adjourn today.
Here.
Brian, I'd like to. Yeah. You know,